Hi, my name's John and welcome to Ask John D. Jones. Okay, so in today's episode I'm going to answer a question that I know a lot of my colleagues are very interested about, and that is, what is the state of contracting in the UK at the moment? Okay, so for all of you who are not based in the UK, this might be a bit of a boring video, but for any of you permies or contractors in the UK, then there's actually some tax laws coming up potentially in April, which is massively going to affect the IT job market, and it's definitely something that you should be aware of. So for those of you who don't know, there's basically a scheme called the IR35. Now as a contractor, I've had to been outside of IR35 since my career. Now to become outside of IR35, you have to do like a few things. So potentially you can't, if you invoice multiple people every month, then you'll be outside IR35. If you use your own equipment and your own software, you're outside IR35. If you could swap yourself with somebody else, again you're outside IR35. Now basically what the scheme is and what the policy is all about is basically there's some companies out there who hire people and they might be there for 10 years, and those people work there for 10 years, they don't swap jobs, and in effect they're just a permanent employee. Now, because they're contractors, they don't actually pay the same amount of tax as everyone else who is permanent employed. And this is basically where the government thinks life is a bit unfair, because as they think that anyone who's self-employed should be paying the same amount of tax as employed people. Now, as a contractor myself, I sort of see, I can understand why the government wants us to pay a little bit more tax. But on the flip side of that, as a contractor and a self-employed person, I need to hire an accountant. With my accountant costs me about £1,000 a year. I also need to do my tax returns. I also need to figure out and manage a lot of contracts. So I guess, if you're permanent, you get 10 days holiday. As a contractor, every single day I take off, I don't get paid. So if I broke my leg or I broke my hand and I couldn't work for 6 months, that's my problem. I don't get maternity pay. So asking people to pay the same amount as tax, but they get different benefits is, as someone who's self-employed, a bit difficult. So basically what this means is that the government are clamping down, and they want people who work in companies who have more than 50 employees to basically work inside the IR35 tax bracket. Now when you work inside the IR35 tax bracket, it will mean that, say, if you're on £500 a day, your net take home would be £400 a day. Now obviously, just because the tax is changing and the laws are changing, that doesn't necessarily mean that the need and the work of the IT industry within the UK is changing. So obviously companies will still need people, but then how they hire people will be a lot more difficult, because do you hire a permanent employee? If so, life's all good, but then what happens if you're working on temporary projects? So for me, I work on websites, most of the e-commerce websites and CMS builds that I work on, they take about a year to build. After that website's built, you don't need the same amount of staff again. So it creates a bit of a difficult need, because all the people who they need to hire for that 1 year to help them build their website, if they have to work within IR35, which would basically work out as getting paid the same amount as a permanent employee, but at that stage you're not getting any of the holidays, job security, any of these sort of plus benefits, makes life a bit difficult. So then potentially in the future contractors are going to be charging more money, potentially people are going to want to hire more permanent employees. But whatever the sort of changes or however it plays out on the 1st of April, things are definitely going to change massively. If you've looked in the news this week, it's October in the UK, all the big banks like Barclays, HSBC, JP Morgan, they've already told all their contractors that their contracts will not be renewed by anymore. So basically by this time, by April, all the contractors will be gone. Now potentially they'll be given new contracts, but at the moment there's I know someone who was down Canary Wharf, and he said it's very doom and gloom down there. There's a bar one night and there's about 100 contractors in there. Everyone's drowning their woes because they're not sure what they're going to happen with their jobs. So basically if you're a permie and you're thinking, yeah, who cares about those contractors, what you've got to think about now is that within the next coming months you're going to have a load of contractors who have been contracting for years or have been thought about contracting. They're now actually going to try and find permanent jobs to try and eke out this transition period. I know a lot of people are doing that now. And then the problem with that is, as I was speaking to a recruiter the other day, is the recruiter was basically saying he put out a C# job advert, and within 2 hours he had 200 applicants. And basically what's happening is, because you've got so many people losing their jobs or their contracts aren't being renewed, you've got a load of people now looking for work, and they're all going for permanent roles. So, you know, maybe a year ago when there's all these permanent positions and a lot of people were more trying to get contracting work because it paid more, now you've got all these permanent roles where you've got now a massive influx of people. So basically what's going to happen is, you know, it's going to be probably tough for contractors and permanent people after April just finding a job for a big period of time. So what can you do about it? Well, one, if you read any good finance book, what they'll say is make sure you have an emergency fund. So obviously when you're working in IT, especially if you're a contractor, these ups and downs happen from time to time. Look at the big global financial crisis of 2007. I mean, there's a big stock market crash in the 1920s. Like, stuff like this has been going on for hundreds of years. So like anything else, you just need to make sure you've got a way of covering your bills. So if you haven't got an emergency fund and you're a contractor, I would definitely recommend that you start saving up now and making sure that you have, you know, a good 3 to 6 months worth of bills covered, because you know, you don't really know what's going to happen. Again, if you're in a contracting role now or you're looking for a role, I would 100% recommend that you start looking for contracts for companies less than 50 people. I would no way recommend at the moment to just get a contract, especially if you're new to contracting as a company over 50 people, because within 3 or 4 months things are going to change. And when you're looking for that new contract in 3 or 4 months, there's going to be people like me, there's going to be all the people and all the guys down Canary Wharf. There's just going to be a load of people all looking for work, so it might be a bit more struggle. Another thing that I've done is I actually buy real estate. So at the moment I've got a few buy-to-let properties. I get people to pay obviously rent, and I know that if I'm unemployed I'll still have my rent money coming in from these other people, so I'm sort of covered. And if this is something that you haven't done, this is definitely something that I recommend that anyone who works in IT should sort of consider, is, you know, alternative sources of income within IT. I mean, I graduated about 15 years ago and I was doing C# web forms. Then web forms went away, and then it was .NET, and it was MVC, and then now there's .NET Core. Currently I'm working in a React role, and because the IT job market changes so much and the skills required changes so much, for anyone who works in IT, there's always like this big risk, and there's a higher chance than pretty much any other profession that your job's role, but as soon as you get to about 45, 50, will become obsolete because the technologies you know just aren't being used anymore. So for this reason I've always been quite paranoid, and I've always made an effort of trying to make alternative income through other streams not based on IT. So if I did get to 50 and I didn't have any skills anymore and I wasn't employable, I had something to fall back on, rather than, you know, just one day going, oh, I can't pay any bills and I'm screwed. So anyway, I hope that's given you all a bit of food for thought. Again, it doesn't mean to be all doom and gloom, but basically until the 1st of April happens and these laws come in and they're 100% definite, then, you know, there's a lot of uncertainty. What I can say is, you know, probably next year with Brexit, because we all live in England, and because of all these tax laws and all these tax changes between inside IR35 and outside IR35, like, things are going to be very difficult and life's going to be a bit annoying. I mean, another thing which I probably haven't mentioned is that the government already did this to the public sector. So if you work for the council or the government, they basically got rid of contractors a couple of years ago. Loads of projects got cancelled, there's loads of change, and it was a load of pain. But, you know, everyone works in IT. I'm sure that all these guys are still working, they've all paid their bills. So because there's so much demand and there's so little programmers at the moment, you know, I think everything's going to be okay, but potentially anyone out there is going to be taking, you know, a 10-20% pay cut, or, you know, you might have to face, you know, a few months off work. But as long as you know about it now and you plan for it, it should be good. Anyway, I hope this video has been helpful for someone. If you want to become an absolute legend, hit the subscribe button. I'll be talking about these tax laws as it gets a bit near April. Obviously, I'm in the self-employed game for the long haul. I won't be moving permy, so let's see how it pans out. If you want to find some great advice about, you know, careers, if you want to learn how to program, if you want to learn about React, go over to my website. It's jondjones.com. That's jondjones.com. If you have a question you want to ask about contracting or anything like that, leave a comment. This is YouTube, so bang a comment below and I'll answer in a video in a few weeks' time. Again, you can go to my website, there's a contact form there, ask a question and I'll always be happy to answer it for you. Anyway, hit subscribe, become a legend. Hope you have a great day. Until next time.